6 million years. That is how long this island has been separated from both the African continent and the Arabian Peninsula, far longer than the time humans have spent standing upright. Across 6 million years of isolation, more than a third of the island's plant species evolved to exist nowhere else on Earth, making this place look more like the set of a science fiction film than a land where people actually live. This is Socotra, an island off the coast of Yemen, covered in umbrella-shaped trees and roots that swell up like water bottles. But for the past decade, that same isolation now coming not just from the ocean, but from one of the most brutal civil wars of the 21st century, is what has both protected and trapped the roughly 60,000 people who live here. What made an island evolve so differently from the rest of the world, and what does human life look like when the world around it is at war? Socotra is the largest island in an archipelago of 4 main islands and 2 rocky islets sitting in the Indian Ocean, roughly 380 kilometers south of mainland Yemen, yet actually closer to the Horn of Africa, only about 240 kilometers away, a strange geography that makes the island biologically closer to Africa than to the very country that governs it. Socotra Island itself makes up 95% of the archipelago's total land area, split into 3 entirely different terrains: dry coastal plains, a limestone plateau riddled with thousands of caves, including Hock Cave, more than 3 kilometers long, and filled with stalactites and ancient inscriptions, and the granite Hajir Mountains rising over 1,500 meters high enough to trap fog and create rare pockets of moisture on an otherwise arid island. But it's the monsoon that truly shapes life here from June to September. The southwest monsoon blows through the strait between the island and the Horn of Africa with enough force to make the surrounding waters some of the most dangerous in the world to sail, cutting Socotra off almost entirely from the rest of the world for months at a time, not because people choose isolation, but because the ocean itself refuses to let them leave. That millions of years of isolation produced one of the densest concentrations of endemic species on the planet, the dragon's blood tree, its canopy spread out like an inverted umbrella, bleeding blood-red sap when cut. The bottle tree, its trunk swollen like a giant water container to survive months without a single drop of rain. So what brought the first people to settle on an island that nature itself seems to have deliberately designed so no one could stay for long? Unlike many other isolated islands, Socotra wasn't an empty land that people simply stumbled upon. It had already been on the world's trade maps for more than 2,000 years. The ancient Greek text, known as the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, written in the 1st century AD, mentions the island under the name Dioscorida as an important stop on the trade route for frankincense, myrrh, and aloe between India, East Africa, and the Mediterranean, meaning that long before any modern concept of nationhood existed, Socotra already served as a waypoint of the ancient world. The island's indigenous people, the Socotri, are believed to descend from ancient South Arabian groups who settled here thousands of years ago, isolated long enough to develop a language and culture entirely distinct from the surrounding Arab world. For centuries, the island fell under the rule of the Mahra Sultanate, a local dynasty that controlled both the South Yemeni coast and Socotra, taxing the trading ships that passed through. The Portuguese briefly occupied a fort on the island in 1507, hoping to turn it into a way station controlling the route to India, but withdrew just a few years later due to a lack of fresh water and supplies. By 1886, the British Empire signed a treaty making Socotra part of the Aden Protectorate, not for the island's economic value, but for its strategic position along the maritime lifeline connecting Britain to its colony in India, proof that throughout its history, Socotra was rarely valued for itself, but almost always for its place on someone else's map. When Britain withdrew from the region in 1967, the island became part of communist South Yemen, later unifying with North Yemen in 1990 to form the United Republic of Yemen we know today. But that political unification turned out to be only the beginning of a far more turbulent Chapter 1, where nature itself, not people, would deliver the biggest shock of all. Climatologically, Socotra almost never experiences tropical cyclones. Its position is too close to the equator and too tucked away in the Indian Ocean for the kind of storms common in the Bay of Bengal or the Arabian Sea to typically reach it. That's exactly why November 2015 became one of the strangest and most devastating meteorological events in the island's modern history. Within less than a week, two consecutive tropical cyclones, Chapala and Meg, made landfall in almost the same area, an occurrence meteorologists described as unprecedented in the recorded history of these waters. It wasn't because Socotra sat on a common storm path, but precisely because it had almost never faced a cyclone in recorded history that the island's infrastructure was completely unprepared to withstand this kind of disaster. Unprecedented winds and rainfall flattened thousands of homes, washed away roads, and severely damaged ancient dragon's blood tree forests that had stood for hundreds, even thousands of years, trees regarded as the living symbol of the island, now uprooted and scattered across the limestone plateaus. Ironically, this natural disaster struck at the exact moment mainland Yemen's government was sinking into the first months of civil war, completely unable to send aid or relief supplies to the island, forcing Gulf powers, particularly the UAE, to step in and fill that humanitarian gap, and that initially humanitarian presence would later become the foundation for a far more complicated geopolitical struggle for influence. So when both a storm of nature and a storm of mainland politics arrived at once, how did daily life for 60,000 people on the island have to adapt? From October to May, once the southwest monsoon has calmed and the seas grow gentler, life on Socotra takes on something closer to the image of a peaceful tropical island. Dawn arrives with the goat herders, the traditional occupation of most rural residents, leading their livestock out of the rock shelters where they took refuge overnight in search of water, and grazing on the limestone plateau, a semi-nomadic way of life almost unchanged for centuries. By mid-morning in Hadibu, the only town of any significant size in the entire archipelago, a few small fishing boats set out taking advantage of some of the richest waters in the Indian Ocean to catch tuna and grouper, the main source of food and income for most coastal families. At midday, the harsh heat of this dry, tropical climate brings nearly all outdoor activity to a halt, and families retreat into the rare shade beneath ancient dragon's blood trees to rest. Those strange trees, beyond their ecological value, also serve as essential shelter from the sun on an island with almost no ordinary shade trees. In the afternoon, in the island's most remote areas, many families still live seasonally in natural caves, especially herders who move constantly in search of water, while in Hadibu, the power grid, running only on generators and rarely operating more than a few hours a day, begins switching on as dusk falls. In the evening, disputes over land water or grazing rights, extremely common on an island where resources are scarce, are typically settled, not through Yemen's formal state courts, but through a council of tribal elders under local customary law, a parallel legal system that has existed longer than the modern concept of the Yemeni state itself. But just a few months later, when the monsoon returns, this entire rhythm gets completely turned upside down. When the Kharif monsoon arrives in June, Socotra doesn't just experience a shift in weather, it experiences an almost total severance from the rest of the world. Winds grow strong enough that boats, already rare even in the calm season, stop running entirely for months at a time, and even the few flights connecting the island to Abu Dhabi or mainland Yemen are frequently cancelled without warning. For locals, this isn't an unexpected disaster, but an anticipated part of the annual calendar. Families stockpile food, fuel, and medical supplies weeks before the monsoon begins, exactly as their ancestors have done for generations. But for anyone needing to leave the island urgently, a mother needing a larger hospital, a patient needing treatment, the island can't provide. The monsoon season turns an ordinary medical need into a life or death gamble, since no ship or helicopter can risk crossing such violent waters. During these isolated months, the community must rely on each other more tightly than ever. Families share stockpiled food. Anyone with basic medical skills becomes the most valuable resource in an entire settlement, and councils of elders must make decisions that would otherwise belong to a modern healthcare or government system. It isn't the war on the mainland that's the only thing isolating Socotra. It's this same recurring monsoon that has trained the island's people in a kind of self-reliant survival instinct that very few communities in the modern world still need. So what social institutions have allowed a community isolated both by season and by war to keep functioning for decades on end? As for education, schools are concentrated only in Hadibu and a handful of small towns, meaning many rural children must walk for hours each day or don't attend school at all, particularly girls in the most isolated herding communities. For healthcare, the mainland civil war has made the supply chain for medicine and medical equipment to Socotra increasingly fragile, turning illnesses that would be easily treatable elsewhere into serious threats, especially during the monsoon season when medical evacuation is nearly impossible. As for religion, most residents practice Sunni Islam today, but historical records show Socotra once had a significant Nestorian Christian community that existed for centuries before Islam became the dominant faith around the 10th century, a layer of religious history rarely mentioned when discussing the Gulf region today. Economically traditional income comes from goat herding, fishing, date farming, and especially dragon's blood resin and Socotra aloe, considered among the finest in the world thanks to the island's distinctive dry climate. While ecotourism, though still young, grew from fewer than 200 visitors in 2001 to thousands annually before the war disrupted it, bringing in income that, according to one local tourism official, lets islanders live better than their compatriots on a mainland mired in war. As for governance, this may be the most complicated part of all. Nominally, Socotra remains a governorate of the Republic of Yemen. But in practice, since 2018, actual control of the island has belonged to the UAE-backed Southern Transitional Council, following a tense standoff between UAE forces and the internationally recognized Yemeni government, right in the capital Hadibu, meaning islanders live under a tangled system of overlapping authority that even international observers struggle to accurately name. And for food, daily meals center on fresh fish, goat meat, dates, and local bread, simple but tied directly to whatever the island can provide for itself under any political circumstance. But there's one cultural detail even more unique than this island's strange trees, something no other Arab nation in the world still holds on to. Few places in the world have changed sovereignty as many times in such a short span as Socotra without the island itself ever initiating a war of conquest. For hundreds of years, the island fell under the rule of the Mahara Sultanate, a local dynasty almost unknown to the outside world. In 1886, sovereignty passed to the British Empire in the form of a protectorate, not because the British conquered the island by force, but because the Mahara Sultan of the time voluntarily signed a treaty in exchange for protection from other competing regional powers. In 1967, when Britain withdrew from the entire South Arabian region, Socotra suddenly became part of one of the rare communist states in the Arab world. The People's Democratic Republic of Yemen, an ideology entirely foreign to the tribal and religious traditions that had existed on the island for thousands of years. In 1919, another historic event occurred without a single bullet fired. North and South Yemen unified peacefully, and Socotra, along with the rest of the South, became part of the modern Republic of Yemen. But by 2018, history repeated itself in a new form as Yemen's central government weakened under civil war. UAE forces landed on the island, leading to a tense standoff right in the capital Hadibu, and since then, practical control of the island has shifted to the UAE-backed Southern Transitional Council, not because islanders voted for that change, but because for most of its history, Socotra has rarely been the one deciding its own political fate. Remarkably, through all these changes of ownership, from a local sultanate to the British Empire, to a communist state, to a Gulf-backed alliance, the daily life of the Socotri people themselves has changed remarkably little because political decisions have always come from outside. While the island's real rhythm has always been shaped by the monsoon, the goat herds, and the Council of Elders, not by whichever flag happens to be flying over the governor's residence. Socotra's most unique cultural detail isn't its strange trees. It's the very language the Socotri people still speak every day. Socotri, a language belonging to the ancient South Arabian Semitic family, older than modern Arabic itself, yet for most of its history had no written form at all, passed down only through speech and oral poetry from one generation to the next. This means thousands of years of Socotra history, mythology, and survival knowledge, which plants are edible, which caves are safe to shelter in during the monsoon, how to read weather signs in the sky were never written on a single page, existing only in the collective memory of the community. An estimated 60,000 people still speak Socotra as their mother tongue, making it one of the few surviving pre-Arabic languages on the Arabian Peninsula, but linguists classify it as highly endangered. As more children grow up learning standard Arabic in school instead of their native tongue, and waves of refugees fleeing the mainland, war bring an increasingly strong Arabic influence onto the island itself. Over the past decade or so, some international linguists have worked to record and build the first written script for Socotra before the oldest generation, the only ones who still remember the full body of ancient oral poetry, pass away without being able to hand it down. It isn't war or storms that pose the greatest threat to Socotra identity, but the quiet reality of a language losing speakers with every new generation. That is what risks costing this island its very soul, even while the dragon's blood trees still stand firm on the limestone plateau. Today, Socotra's greatest challenge doesn't come from the island itself, but from a war it never took part in. Since 2016, salaries for state employees across Yemen, including Socotra, have gone largely unpaid, pushing much of the population into poverty, even though the island itself has never witnessed a single battle. Climate change is making rare storms like Chapala and Meg in 2015 increasingly likely to recur, while international funding for conserving the dragon's blood tree, the island's symbolic species, has nearly dried up as the world's attention turns to other crises. Free-roaming goat herds, the main source of livelihood for thousands of years, have now become one of the biggest threats to young dragon's blood tree saplings, leaving the ancient forest almost unable to regenerate on its own. But the same isolation that once made Socotra poor and forgotten for centuries has also remarkably spared it from the direct destruction of one of the bloodiest civil wars the Arabian Peninsula has seen in decades. Not a single bomb has fallen on Socotra. Not a single battle has taken place on the island itself, while the mainland, just a few hundred kilometers away, has seen more than 370,000 lives lost. That is Socotra's greatest paradox. An island so isolated it has almost been forgotten by the world, yet that very forgetting has become a shield protecting both a one-of-a-kind ecosystem and the lives of the 60,000 people who call it home. Because sometimes the safest place isn't the one that's best protected, it's simply the one the world forgot to look at, and for the people still living among trees shaped like they came from another planet, that forgetting, ironically, may be the greatest gift they've ever received. If you're just as drawn to places the world seems to have left behind, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and tell me in the comments after Socotra which isolated corner of the world should we explore next.